Welcome to Finding the Frame. I'm your host, Chris Haigh, and joining me today is the exceptional cinematographer and director, Jessica Lee Gagné. Her masterful eye crafted the visual language of Severance and also Escape from Dannemora and the feature film Sweet Virginia. We're going to discuss her journey from her father's Quebec video stores right up to directing in season 2 of Severance. We'll look at her influences, her meticulous precision and attention to detail, and her powerful emotional storytelling, whilst also talking about how she stepped up from cinematographer to director. Jessica, welcome to Finding the Frame. So talk to me a little bit about your background. I've done a little bit of research and I found out that you first of all started off working in Quebec City in your father's video store. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, he had many video stores, so it was a bit of a chain. And I definitely have plastic sealed wrap my share of VHSs and then DVDs. I literally have done hours and hours of that. So I grew up like having access to a lot of movies and them always being around the house. Just piles and piles of cassettes everywhere. So I don't know, it was just part of life. I feel like I didn't necessarily know I would be in the movie industry as a kid, but it was everywhere.
What was it that changed there? What was it that made you go from seeing it as a sort of an enjoyable thing to, well, not an enjoyable thing, sorry, a sort of hobby to being a career itself?
Well, I think there was this one moment where I got interested about directing is when I saw City of God, Fernando Meirelles' film, the Brazilian film. When that film came out, I remember thinking, oh, this is also possible. You know, I grew up watching mostly American movies and some Canadian, some French Canadian films, but my father was into more of that American style. So that's kind of what I was like being dragged to. And I do have like a weird comfort feeling with those movies, early 90s kind of feeling that it'll always be a part of me. But that film, City of God, introduced like a very different way of shooting and another style. And I was fascinated by it. I think that might have been one of the movies that kind of made me go and decide to study film.
Yeah. And did you, I read somewhere as well that your mother was taking you to see things that were sort of like more European films or like cinema and stuff like that. Was there any sort of European influences on your decision to become a cinematographer?
My mom, so more when I started studying film in CEGEP, because in Quebec we have a different we have a different schooling system than in the rest of Canada or in the States. There's this kind of college that we have between high school and university. And that's where I like first went into some film classes. And her and I would go to this theater called Le Clap in Quebec. And it was this, back in the day, it might have only had like 3 or 4 what are they called? I was going to say room, but 3 or more
screens.
Yeah. And she would bring me to these movies that were in foreign languages because for her, it wasn't necessarily about the filmmaking. Her thing was foreign language. So she's like, there's a movie in Spanish. Let's go see it. I remember we went to see Y tu mamá también, which was like,
oh, wow.
We came in a little late and we had to like walk in with that opening scene and just be like, okay, hi. So yeah, that brought me to see another style of filmmaking, which was that European style of filmmaking.
And who was it like? So when you went through the Canadian film school, I suppose, when you went through all that, who was it that was influencing you then? Whose sort of work were you looking at and going, this is the kind of style that I really like and I'd love to sort of emulate?
Well, after some of these more, I don't want to say like City of God was commercial, but like City of God was like a huge hit. When I went to university, I started really digging a little bit more into what became my style, which is more of like a New York 70s film style. So Clute is always one that I always have to mention because for me, the work of Pakula and Gordon Willis together on that is just absolutely amazing. And then there was like Dog Day Afternoon and Serpico and just that style and that grit and that the thing that would happen in the 70s where they wouldn't do, Gordon Willis is different because he did light very often, but then there was also this understanding of how to not light and amazing use of just frame and architecture to kind of like shape things. I feel like that era filmmaking for me is probably what defined my earlier work.
Yeah. I think that's what interested me about Gordon Willis, to be honest. I think it Conrad Hall who called him the Prince of Darkness. There was the idea of he loved all this really dark sort, yeah, and then he contrasted it with these like bright wedding scenes in The Godfather and stuff like that, you know.
It's hard to find cinematographers who really kind of reinvented the craft. Like he's that one person who comes in a specific time with the power to be able to do that, because not everyone can have that luxury of shooting something in a way that a studio would disagree with, because I think sometimes he took risks where there were moments they had to reshoot things because of him. Um, and you do not want that today. Like you do not want to be the one who causes the reshoot in any way, shape, or form. But he was able to do that. And that just says a lot about his character and his personality. I think he was a very intense person, but that kind of person can change how we see movies and how movies are made, and for a cinematographer to do that, I think that's like quite impressive.
Yeah. I read somewhere as well that you're a fan of Owen Roizman as well, like looking at things like the French Connection and
Yeah, love French Connection. I mean, it doesn't like fit in that well to what we've done together, but there's something about the essence of it that I love. I mean, he's amazing. There's a lot of people that I think in that era have done some work that's just still looks gorgeous today. Like it doesn't age in a way. And I mean, I can't say that I've done that in my work, but like, I think that if in 20 years, people look at anything that I've done and they have that feeling, like, then I'll be really proud of my work. I can't actually even like look at anything I've done right away.
Really?
Yeah, no, Dannemora took me 5 years to watch it. I like, there's a way I can't even, episode 7, I cannot watch. I think it'll take me a couple of years, but if I need to, for some reason, like they'll play like a clip of it and I can kind of work through that. But sitting down and watching it, once it's done, we did the color grade, the mix and everything, like I can watch it until I need to in that process. But there's this thing that happens once it's released out into the world where I need space from it. And I mean, I need time to basically like digest it. Because when I saw Dannemora, like if I were to watch it 2 years after, I would just have so much PTSD of what was happening in every shot on set. Like I am someone who feels everything that's happening around me and like is very conscious of production. So I'll be taken back to whatever was happening behind the camera and I can't watch it. So I need that 5 years to forget the experience and then really enjoy the actual thing.
Yeah, so it's something that you can only look back on properly when you've had a bit of distance from it, so you can truly appreciate it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I noticed a lot of like, the reason why I mentioned Roizman there was because I noticed a lot of that kind of stuff in Escape from Dannemora. It felt a lot more that kind of gritty sort of documentary style at certain points. Yeah.
The camera moves less, but like the texture is a texture I always aim for. And one of the reasons Ben wanted us to work together, I think, is he could see how I have a certain skill with shooting digital, making it look filmic. Like it's something I'm quite good at that. I love texture. I can obsess about the texture of images, and even Severance, it was creating something very different in terms of feel. But that combination of like lenses and camera, when you really get down to it, you can build that film plane. Even if it's not on film, you can kind of like emulate it. I mean, nothing compares to film. Film is so unique, but I love that. I love playing with the density of like the digital medium.
What do you think it was that, I mean, you just brought in Ben Stiller there and everything. What do you think it was that made him want to connect with you? Was it your work on, was it Sweet Virginia?
Yes, he's
Jamie Dag.
Yeah, and I think something like really hooked him. That thing that I was talking about, like that filmic quality. When he first met me, he asked me, "Did you shoot film or digital?" He couldn't tell. He thought it was film, and it was. I mean, it was Alexa. And then we met twice, and the first meeting, I went on about the movies that I liked and the movies that I felt would be appropriate for this series, and it was exactly what he was thinking. So we were really aligned there. Obviously he grew up in New York, so like this kind of like film era for him it was super important. And then the second time we met, I brought some photo book references and stuff, and it just felt so obvious that we were going to work together. It was weird. And he took a risk because like he wouldn't have known, it's not like it was very obvious why he picked me. just because of the style of the projects that I had been working on were quite different from anything he had done. And I just knew he wanted something different also, because why else would he come and ask me to work with him, you know?
Yeah. So do you find when you're working with him that he's somebody who tries to push you out of your comfort zone, and he knows that you're an intelligent cinematographer, so that you'll look for different ways to access the material that he's giving you, I suppose?
I think we both did that to each other. I think he saw like kind of my style of shot making, and like that you could see a little bit of. I mean, you could see a lot of it of in Sweet Virginia, but he was into that, like, pan and zoom, dolly kind of thing, which is something I really really love to do. Um, and I'm definitely like a risk taker, so I would always push him to take risks. But then he challenged me on another level in terms of working on a much bigger scale, and also working for larger audiences. All things that I had never really been, it hadn't really been possible for me to do that kind of work before. I was focused on smaller movies that had just different purposes. And Dennis really knows what like works in terms of a general, like a bigger public, a bigger audience. And now I realize that I'm actually interested in that and want to do that more. I want to make things for people, and that things that a lot of people want to watch. Um, there are different forms of art for different people, and everything has like their purpose. But I had been quite close-minded about that, and seeing him work and seeing him understand, the bigger picture is something that was so enlightening for me, and that I needed honestly in my career to kind of like move on to the next thing.
Yeah. One of the things I liked about your Sweet Virginia, when I saw it, it was the second thing I saw of yours, because I saw Escape from Dannemora, and then I thought, oh, I always do this. I always think, right, I'll look for that cinematographer, I'll see what else they've done, and sort of watch their other stuff. I really like, there's a one take in it, I think it is, where he parks outside like a gas station or something, just to make a phone call, and you just stay in the back of the car watching it all through the windscreen. I just thought it was a beautiful shot, and I also like the low-key lighting in that, and yeah, this diner scene, a few diner scenes actually, but the one where he does the shooting is exceptional. There's a lot of cut off kind of shadows and stuff. Very Gordon Willis, I suppose we could say ourselves as well.
That one was really dark. But the phone booth shot was actually something I pitched to the director. And yeah, I saw that phone. We were looking for where to shoot that, and we were living in this small town for a short time called Hope in Vancouver, and I saw that phone booth in that parking lot, and I pitched him the shot. He liked it, so we did it. It was so simple that we had like we didn't have much money. Like all these shots, like now I realize I would have done them with remote heads, and then back then I like didn't really know what a remote head was, so I did it with the hi-hat bolted down onto the car, and it's me in the back, like in the trunk, and the AC's also there. He's zooming on his controller, and it's just us doing. I'm like panning while I'm trying to not knock the guy out. Yeah, it's like very simple, but like my mind thinks like that. It just thinks of like the simplest way of doing something. Now I've had access to much bigger tools and all of the stuff, but I still gravitate to how to do it in the simplest, realist way. Like I have a little bit of a allergic reaction when it gets to visual effectsy. I do try to like pull away from that if I can, but then sometimes you need to. And that's also, I think, a lesson that I learned from Ben is to like embrace that kind of stuff a little bit more. I did not come from that world.
No, I think that's interesting actually, because it's something I was going to ask. Do you think you'll ever pine for, a simplicity? So, sort of like working with all the grips to try and find ways to rig a camera onto something. Like I work with a grip company out here, and I write all their newsletters and stuff as a kind of part-time fun. And, they do things like guitar rigs and sort of, what's the other one? Putting rigs on roller coasters and all that kind of stuff.
That's a guitar rig.
They mount a camera to the it's like all this music video stuff that they work for, like Dua Lipa and all these,
Okay.
like people that I sadly don't listen to, but like they put a guitar rig on so you can see the person strumming and stuff, and it's really cool to see how they mount cameras on things for even lower budget things like that. So do you think you'll ever pine for that kind of hands-on sort of manual way of doing things, especially as we move into this new technological age?
I mean, I'm not even good with a phone. I'm not good with technology in general. I'm someone who, and even lighting, like I'll get from point A to point B. I work with many different grips and gaffers. I have to figure out a language with them. Like when I work with people, I always kind of ask for some prep time where we get to practice together. we create our language. Like that then becomes our thing. But like I don't like to have to choose. There's a couple of things I love. There's like I love mole beams. They're my favorite kind of light. But I won't use them if it doesn't make sense, you know? But there's not many things that I'm like, it needs to be that, or that I like stick to. And I do like it when the crew has their own ideas or their own thoughts about how to do it. And we just have conversations. Sometimes I do have to override if I feel like it's going to bring the wrong energy on set. Like that will happen. Like someone will pitch some setup and I know that that will affect the actor's performance if we're doing it like that way. So I'm going to steer away from that. So I do need to work with people who understand that I'll have the final say, but you need to work with people that can challenge you and push you. And that wasn't always easy. Like I had to navigate that. I think like moving to bigger projects, you have to work more and more with your team because like the bigger the project is, you can't do everything. You know, I can't be in the trunk of the car now with the hi-hat like panning. I need an operator who can do that for me. And I've learned with the years to embrace that. Especially operators on Severance. Like we work with some of the best operators in the industry work on this show. And some of the shots are incredibly hard to do. Like some of these pen remote shots, like not just handheld where you can kind of, yes, handheld is an art and I love handheld, but some of these dolly push-ins that are not necessarily on track where we have to land in a whip pan on someone that's like across the room. You need an A-level person to do that. And we work with those people. And sometimes I have to have conversations about like, how are you going to do that? And, it's like testing it to make sure that they have the right way. And then also giving them time and space to do their work. Like when the shots are more complicated, if they're like, well, I'm not going to be able to like land this today. And I'm okay, well, then I'm going to schedule it. We'll move it to that day. You can practice it on that day and then we'll get to it.
One of the things that you said earlier on was about how you brought a photography book, Todd Hido, to a meeting with Ben, and Shane, who's the person who owns Filmmakers Academy, he always talked about Todd Hido's, I think it was Intimate Distance. I think that was the name of the thing. And always about Todd Hido's process, going out and walking around the place and shooting like a documentarian, I think he used to say in the past and stuff like that. Is that something that you do? Do you take the script, read it, and then you go out and you kind of, I don't know, pull things from things like that?
I definitely do that. I feel like I didn't have to do it at all much for season 2 of Severance because it was so established. And I don't know that I'll be doing it as a director, but as a cinematographer, it was my way of kind of communicating with directors, or at least kind of making sure that we were on the same page. I haven't worked multiple times with many directors. Ben is kind of the one that I've worked with. He is the one I've worked with the most. So we kind of don't need to talk anymore. We just know, I just know what he likes. Like I can say it in like 3-4 words and I'll be like, oh, this movie is this. And like, it's just something, you read it to me. And when you read the script, okay, I got to the photo book thing, but when I read a script, I already, in my mind, know the format that I think it should be. And the feel that it should have. So I'll often in those first conversations with director ask them, how do you see it? And if it matches what I'm thinking, then it'll be usually like a sign that, okay, like we're on the same wavelength, or like, we see the same movie. And sometimes I even will like give them specific references, even if they're obscure, and I often hit the bullseye. Like I can often read a script and know exactly the film that they have in mind. It's like a weird, I don't know, maybe all DOPs can do that, but like I definitely have brought in like an obscure book to a meeting to a director, and the director was saying like, that's my reference. And it's not Todd Hido, you know what I mean? Like it's something way more obscure. So that's something I love doing. And now I get to read scripts as a director and be like, well, I'm going to do what I don't have to like work through, I don't have to convince someone of anything, I can just do it. But, I think that the photo book thing really is more of establishing communication, creating a language with a director so that we know that, oh, we can go here, we can go there. And I never want to like copy anything. It's just more, okay, like let's feel like that we're feeling it out. We're feeling like where we're comfortable and we're not comfortable. Because you can show some references and the director can be like, no, that's not right. And then you just know better. We don't have always like tons of money and time to like make these things. So you want to make sure that, you're doing the right thing. And as a DP, there is like this weird moment on set. The first time you work with a director, like the first scene that you shoot, you kind of you're gauging like if you're hitting it or not. And if you're not, you'll feel it in the director where they'll ask questions about what you're doing. You don't want that to happen. Because then there's no trust. Like
they've got to overlook you on everything, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, and that can happen if you're not aligned with the person that you're working. But when you are, I mean, okay, there's moments where like Ben has told me like, oh, are you going to do that? And I'm like, oh, well, I was going to, but like I won't now. And with him and I, it's fine. Like we're way past that. But I'm talking about like the first time you work with someone, you know?
Did you? So I read somewhere that you do lots of these very detailed sort of, I don't know, director's Bible is the best phrase I can probably tell. And that way everybody gets on the same page. I really like that as an idea. I think that I was talking to Adam Newport-Berry last week about who's the DP of the studio. And he said that he does these very detailed, every page is a different scene so that everybody, his whole team can get on the same page. Is that's something that you want to continue doing as a director yourself?
Yes. I mean, as a direct, the thing is because like the first thing I directed, I DP'd as well. So it was a different experience. It's a very unique experience. But
oh, so you DP'd episode 7 as well as directed?
I DP'd and directed it, except for the flashback stuff. Another DP did because it was on film, and I felt like that was just too much. But as a DP, I did that a lot. I definitely would have, I would make like a mini mood board per location or per scene. Often did that. I love like printing out and cutting out. I always like end up stealing all of the PAs in the office and they're cutting and printing stuff for me. I try to convince myself that they don't hate me because of it, but no, I'll make these elaborate, like insane mood boards.
It saves them having to go for coffee, so you're fine. You know what I mean?
No, sometimes they're like, oh, you're going to do this. And then, I don't know, they can see what the show's going to look like before anyone. But in the hallways, the production hallways in Severance, I didn't have enough space on my walls in my office to do this. So we got mood boards to line the main hallway where Ben and I had our offices. And you could walk, and I did like one, it was huge. I can't even like tell you how big. It was like an entire hallway. It was like episode 1, every single scene broken down. Episode 2 and 3. But after 3 episodes, like I kind of, in a show like Severance, you kind of define the language. Season 2, I didn't do that. But what happened is that we made books out of these and then we shared them with the other DPs that worked on the show. Like it made my job easier to communicate with them. I also do like operator watch lists. So I'll make a specific list of movies we have so many operators that come on and work on the shows. We have multiple units. There's a lot of people who work on Severance. So you're constantly briefing people. So I'll make a list with the movies and why, each movie is important to watch. And it really helps, I think, people coming in, like anchor in something.
Was it daunting? I mean, like, I suppose in season 1, I suppose more so I'm asking this, but was it daunting to be shooting a place that's windowless with predominantly white walls? It doesn't seem like the most exciting thing yet. I will say exceptionally well shot. So it looks exciting, but like, it seems on paper that would be terrifying.
I didn't want to do it. I said no. I didn't say no the first time. I just said I was kind of questioning why it had to be this one, our next project. Like really, we have to do the thing in the office with the no windows. What am I going to do? I love like micro details and camera work and lighting, and like I always want to do something different. But then I just felt trapped. Though it was the one, it got greenlit and I'm like, okay, let's go. And then I found a lot of like visual office photography. I went on a deep dive. This one book, The Office, Lars Thunbjörk, called Office. I don't think it's called The Office. This Lars Thunbjörk book, which was the first book that I found at this photo book fair. I remember texting it to Ben and being like, oh, I get the look. This is good. Like, this is the look. And it kind of, for me at least, created that first office visual. And there's also like a super important book by Lee Freelander that not many people know about called Cray, which is he went in this town. I think he might have got hired by this company, or he either like went there and discovered people and then went in, and he actually shot the town, but then also shot a factory where they were making like electronics or something. And the photos that he was taking of the people really are like MDR-esque. of like these like wider angle, weird kind of frames. So that was really inspiring for that. Lynn Cohen is huge inspiration, but also just like I get very involved in production design and I work very closely with production designers. So Severance was definitely something where I got in there and just participated to make sure that, you know, aesthetically things were going to be aligned. Um, yeah, because you feel like when you don't have the beauty of like being able to do, you know, fancy lighting or anything, you're kind of going to be cut short. But I also would question Ben, oh, can we turn on the lights in this scene? Oh, can we do like this scene like this and just have that? And then there was like the music and the MD, the music dance experience that came up. And then there was the egg party. And I was like, okay, great. Like I have all these moments, you know, that came through.
What have you got in the ceiling there for the MDR room?
There's just
What's
a bunch of sky panels. Because like,
okay?
and the dimmer board up on Kevin, I'm probably hoping I'm good. I can't remember his last name. Anyways, he is amazing. He really crushed it. Like some of these lighting sequences, he'd spend months making them. Like we really had to put them through tons of testing, so that they would pass. And yeah, it's a big part of the creating. But like you can't sit there and like watch him create that. You know, like he needs to take the time to do it.
I heard that you did lighting workshops in the early days. What can you talk me through what those are?
Yeah, it's workouts. I call them lighting workouts.
Lighting workout, not workshops.
Yeah, I mean you can say workshop.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember what I like would call them, but I think that it's about taking time meeting your team. So I work often in different cities. I don't always get to, and I very rarely have worked with the same crew. I think Severance is like my longest relationship with a key grip and gaffer. Everything else is like always like new people, except when I work back in Montreal, but still. And you're going on this huge journey with these people and you have to establish a new language. So I'll ask production to give us several days of pre-lighting where we'll go in specific sets and just light for different scenes. For example, I'll pull up like scene 5, scene 20, scene 30, and we'll light the space. I don't light for actors. I always light for space first. And then if I have to enhance, I will. But usually I don't light like specifically where someone's standing. And we'll light the space for these different scenes. We'll remember them. Like the grip and gaffer will mark every light on the ground, where it was, what the diffusion was, or whatever we use, they'll like mark it. And in this time, we're not rushed. There's no stress and we can just talk about light. And like, I love accidents. There's always like accidents that happen when you get the kick of like some lights hitting a C-stand, and then it just does the most beautiful reflection on the wall, and I'll point that out. And then what's really cool is like when you get to like a second season, at one point like the grip's like looking for those things. Like Johnny, who works on this show, he'll be like, oh, there's like this accident that happened there, that's great, and we kind of get excited about the same things. But yeah, it's giving us a chance, because usually directors and DPs have time in prep to like have these conversations, but you don't always have them with your grip and gaffer. So I fight really, really hard to do that. Often I'm going to have to be in like all the prep meetings right before, and I'll even, you know, go on the meetings with my AirPods in my ears, be on a Zoom while I'm lighting with them, because I think that time with them is more important. I'm going to be doing that. Just don't get that luxury in television that much, and even in film a lot you don't. Like, so you have to find ways as a DP to get that time in there.
Do you think that you got more time because of obviously I think that it was 3 years between seasons 1 and 2, and I think that they had like writer's strike and all kinds of stuff going on there. So did that give you more time to be creative and to think through different ways in which you're going to shoot things?
Not really, because I think I like disconnected like everyone else, you know, and I think I needed that. Like I had stuff in my own life that I just kind of needed to address. So I think I really enjoyed the time off, because I've been working like a crazy person for like the past 15 years. So for me, it was kind of needed for like my mental health.
I bet, yeah. And I suppose emotionally, for a show like this, there's an emotional and psychological drain to watch it and to even be involved in it. I suppose it must be a lot to sort of make it.
It's a long time, and I'm away from my family. And that's a lot, you know, when you're not in the place where all your friends are and your family is. It's just different. And so that can get long. Also, hours in television it's hard. Yeah, it's like very long weeks. and then you're walking in these white hallways every day. Yeah, you kind of go a little crazy.
I watched I went to a Q&A, I think it was at the DGA, right after the finale, the day after the finale. There was a few of the cast there, and I think Ben was there, and Dan Erickson, the creator, and they talked about block shooting. How did you manage to sort of prepare for that in order to keep sort of like each episode flowing the way that you wanted it to flow? I suppose that must be quite difficult when you're doing block shooting, right? Because it's bouncing from here to there to the other one to this one.
For me, it doesn't stress me out that much. I'm so used to it, and could even episode 7 was like we shot all the flashbacks of the last week of the entire shoot, and then everything else was kind of like peppered through the schedule. And that was like my first time directing, so for me as a director, I was a bit of an advantage because I could kind of edit the first part, and it just gave me a little space between going and directing the last part. But I keep very intense notes. I know how every scene will be shot before, like lighting wise, continuity wise. I'm a stickler for like the time of day. I am often asking Ben like, oh, can this be like this time of day? Can we shoot this way? And checking if if it works with the script, like if it can't, like sometimes I want a scene to be day, and it's written night, I'll ask, can we change it? And I have a good relationship with the writers, so often like I can actually just make some shifts because I know tonally it'll be nicer.
Sorry for interrupting the conversation, but just wanted to do a quick shout out to B&H, who have provided our webcam and also our microphone and are powering this podcast. Thanks very much, B&H. And now back to the conversation.
I could have shown you my Severance binder. Right, episode 7 binder. Where the heck is it? It's what's holding up my computer.
Oh, don't worry about it. Is it something that you're going to get made into like a book? Like you said, you've done other things like that. Do you think you'll do that for yourself? So you've got something that's kind of
I feel like I would be that kind of person who would like make a book. I made books. So I made these binders for Ben for other projects. So he has them all. I've given them all to him. The binders that I make, like in terms of references and frames and things and whatever. But this time I like the idea of keeping the 7 one like this, but I think there's all my notes that I take on the day are in it. Even like when I'm like marking out shots that we've done, I like to use liquid paper I'll do overheads of the shots we have to do. And then I use liquid paper to like take out the shots that are done. And my assistant was like, why don't you just keep them on there? Like you can like see where they are. And I like the satisfaction of seeing that the paper's clear and clean. And I know that
we've got through everything.
Yeah. But I'm screwing up my original plan. Anyways, we'll work on it.
So talk us through your planning, the execute. Like, first of all, before we move off it, it was interesting that with your director's binder, what have you got in there? You got shot lists, overheads, lighting plans, anything else in there? Is there sort of like, would you put sort of aesthetic images in there to sort of give people a lookbook idea or what?
I would, if I was DPing, put aesthetic images in there. As a director, it's so in my head and there's no communicating with any, like I don't really know that I'll be doing that. But overheads, the director will remain. As a DP, I have the overheads, and I'm the one who's kind of following through what we're shooting, what we should shoot next. Like I take care of making it the most efficient possible. So the director doesn't have to think about that. I mean, obviously, I'll run it by him and just make sure that it works for performance. But like my goal is always just shooting it the most efficiently for the actors and for everyone also. But in the director's binder, there's like even sometimes like poems, pictures, things, ideas. Beside the script, I'll just write notes about like different ways of saying certain lines that I, want to keep in mind, shot ideas. It's a bit messy, but it's a little bit of everything.
It's quite nice to know that there's those kind of things out there. Do you think that, obviously you're going to now go up on this directorial journey and stuff like that. Do you think that that's something that's going to adapt as you go along this journey, as you do different things, or just feature films and different things like that? I think that's sort of...
I'm noticing now, so this experience was not expected. I didn't see any of this coming before I was asked to do it. I really hid from the idea of directing for a long time. It was unconscious that it was something I wanted. And when I did it, even in prep, I could already feel like, oh, this is something that I'm really like meant to do, and I just need to try. I need to try, you know? So moving through that was really interesting. And now I'm in that part of directing where you have to find your projects and you need time. You need to spend time on hunting them down or writing them yourself. And I'm doing all of the things, but there is like a big insecurity of, oh, is this going to work out? Is it not going to work out? You have to be really sure of yourself because you're investing in yourself every day. Like when I wake up in the morning now, I don't have to go to set. I don't have this like journey that I need to do. Go to set, come home, like all that's gone. Now it's wake up, write, read scripts, send emails, do Zooms, meet people. And I'm so much more uncomfortable in that kind of like space where I don't know what's going to happen because you have no idea. And I'm interested in all sorts of media. I'm pushing in many places right now. I mean, I do have the plan. I'm planning on making it my first feature this year.
Oh,
and
congratulations.
Thanks. I mean, well, it's hopefully happening. All of these things, like you have to make them happen. And as a DP, I didn't feel that as much. Like there's something so beautiful about cinematography that you kind of get carried in the way. It's like when you get taken onto a project, there's this, you're not living like that months or years of a movie not knowing if it'll go or not, you know? And that's something that's really hard that directors have to go through. So I'm kind of navigating that right now.
Yeah, you have to drive it yourself, I suppose. You know, it's one of those things that you got to take to the goal line no matter what happens. You know?
You have to believe in yourself in like the biggest way because it's such a gift to be able to make this kind of stuff and to be a director, you know, to be at the helm of the whole thing and be like signing off on all of the decisions. Not only do you have to be super vulnerable, but you have to, you have to be the driving force behind it. Like if you're making something interesting, I think that's how it works.
Do you think you have to be a little bit headstrong as well? Like there's one thing that you said about Ben Stiller when you first started working with him on Escape from Dannemora. He knew exactly what he wanted, and I just had to make sure I didn't get in the way of that. Anyway. Whereas obviously now you've brought a lot more of yourself to Severance to the point where you've made an episode yourself, which arguably is one of the best episodes in the whole season. You know, in fact, in the whole show, I would say. But do you think that you've learned to be headstrong in that way? You've learned that I'm going to have to push forward in my vision?
Well, I have to believe in myself. Because for me, I mean, cinematography has also kind of been a gift in the sense that it's kept me close to what I actually really wanted. And it's going to make me the kind of director that I'm going to be, you know? Those 15 years of training are 15 years of understanding cinematic language on like another level, you know? When I was really dedicated to this craft in a specific part of it. And all of that experience watching all of those directors, like I never had that as the DP. I never watched other DPs work. I just went straight from school to shooting stuff. And I always was kind of like, oh, but like, am I doing it right? Or, you know, I just kind of like followed my intuition in that sense. But as a director, I've watched many directors work now, you know, and I can kind of take the things that work for me, leave the things that aren't me behind. But all of that experience is going to make me the kind of director that I'm going to be.
Yeah, that's an exciting thing. That's an interesting way to look at things as well. You know, I had somebody that I was talking to not long ago who was talking about how they saw Scorsese work on set, and they said it was like a cathedral. By the time he came on, everybody went silent, and they just listened to him talk through everything that was going on in his mind. And one of the things, I think it was on the Killers of the Flower Moon, they talked about how he basically had learned, he knew instantly, right, we're going to have to bring the car in, then we're going to switch it off because we don't have the car running while we're having these two people doing dialogue. That's when we're going to have the camera in here. That's when we're going to cut there. We're going to do it. And literally set this whole day out in the first 15 minutes of being there. And it was just fascinating to see how that director works as opposed to somebody else, you know, who's directing also, you know. Talk me through, in terms of you as a director then for this episode, what was your inspiration? What did you look to for episode 7, Chico Bardo? I think it's called Chico Bardo. I'm terrible. In my accent, it sounds awful. You know what I mean? It's terrible. Anything that I try and say that's remotely foreign sounds horrendous, right? But yeah, what was your inspiration? What were you looking at? What were the things that you tried to capture? What was, you know, ideas that you had for the look and the visual aesthetic?
there weren't many references, like photography, visual references, like we've had on show in general. Um, I think that the first things I focused on, being like a new to directing, was how can I make this personal? For me, there's a lot of me and Gemma. I really pulled from a lot of like my personal life and personal experience and certain disappointments in my own life to make it feel real, and having conversations with Deacon about that. And I think that did kind of affect the whole thing in a way, because I was there to defend it. And I wanted a woman to direct this episode. That was very important to me. And the themes were important to me. So I did that work on it, and I defended it. Then in terms of visuals, Bright Star was a reference, Jane Campion's film. And there's this Belgian film called Close that's also a ref that the writer brought on as well, Mark Friedman. Anyways, but the thing I think that made this episode really special was the collaboration I had with the writer. Mark and I really worked closely, and I was able to kind of like put in a lot of like the technical transition aspects in it. Because I have that background as a cinematography, to me, like that language is really, it's in me. Like I'm not thinking about it. I just kind of I just can come up with stuff very easily when it comes to complicated camera moves. So we worked together to develop those and put it together in this kind of like snake form. He wanted it to feel like a whirlwind. That to me is one of the most memorable things he said about it, was like, I want it to just feel like the whirlwind was the word he used. And to me, it also resonated on the sense of what is time and how time works and how you can't, it's not a linear thing. You know, I do believe everything's happening all at once, and the transitions in the episode play in that idea that, you know, you can be in this one space and living in emotion with someone, and then at the same time, this is going on in the background. I feel like life is basically, it's like just layers of things that are stacked up on top of each other, and they're all moving, you know, and kind of fluctuating together. So it was an exploration of that, and there was a lot of synchronicities that happened when we were doing it. A lot of like small miracles on this episode.
Yeah, I think that one of the ways that you showed that in terms of the time passing, in terms of time being, you know, sort of everything all happening all at once, was these movements, these razor sharp transitions that you did. You know, like I know there's one shot that we talked that's been talked about. It's in a lot of things, and we'll probably ask you about it as well when you go through and you move through all the wires and everything. But one of the shots, the shot of her eyes, from the moment that she finds out, well, that she's sort of almost confirming that she's pregnant to Matt's sister, right through to obviously the sadness of losing that transition on the eyes was exceptional. How did you achieve that, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, it's a long story with that one, but it was something that I, as a cinematographer, had done for a director in the past, and he didn't end up using it in the edit. But when I saw it, like what we had done, it was one of the most beautiful things that I've ever seen, and I wanted to redo it, but it was different. It was a scene that was shot at blue hour, and we shot it at real blue hour. I wanted the sun to set during the scene, so we were doing it in this, like, we had like this 10-minute window where we could do this shot, and we did it. It was very emotional, very intense scene between two lovers, and this woman was drinking on the edge of her bed, and it was blue hour. I actually have like the beginning and the end of the shot in my Instagram feed. No one knows that, but so anyway, so she's drinking this drink, and on the edge of her bed, it's blue hour. It's really dark, and then her lover comes in. They talk. They have like an argument, and then they end up like making love in the scene. And then she gets out of bed at the end, and she's sitting on the edge of the bed. But by that time, it's night, fully night. And in the scene, we shot with the real blue hour, but I had the gaffer come in when the light would go down, like when they started making love. That's when there was not enough light, and the camera was starting to like not register. And we had a little basket of lights that were actually Christmas lights. And in this basket of lights, he dimmed it up. So he brought the basket with a pole, he brought this basket over them as they're making love. And the light, how it turned on, because the camera settings were set for blue hour. So when the light turned on, their backs became like fire, like red, because it was that first moment of tungsten turning on, and they like illuminated. And just that moment, I wanted to recreate that feeling that I saw there, just because it just had this insane essence to it. in this shot it's very different because it's a different scenario. But what I wanted it to feel like for her was what it feels like to go to hell. So you can be in this like beautiful moment of daytime and this lovely setting, and then she's transitioning to hell. So, we reinforce that with the sound, and just that rumble that's there, and I just want to feel like how it feels like when you lose someone, your whole, when you're in that state, and it feels like one of the Bardo states, by the way, that they talk about in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, where you feel terror, like what terror feels like. A lot of people know what it feels like to feel fear, but terror is when your body collapses. Almost like, you'll almost urinate on yourself when you're in that state, like you lose control because it's like your whole self just melts. And that's what she's feeling in my mind at that moment. So how do you say that visually? Well, it had to be this like sensorial experience, and it's her moving through that. And she's going to another point in her timeline in her life. But like you can imagine that you can live these highs and lows at this, simultaneously.
Yeah, it's a gut punch. It's a real guttural punch as we move through it. And one of the things that you mentioned there was about the sound design, and it's exceptional in this. Obviously, now that you're not doing cinematography, you've moved on to directing. How did that change? You got to actually explore sound design. Was that something that you indulged in?
In television, unfortunately, I don't think it's crafted enough. Usually, not on Severance. Usually, I think that like we don't give sound. And I'm guilty of that as well, like doing 3 camera setups. Sometimes you kind of like shoo sound away. And I'm going to try and make a promise to myself to like not to be way more considerate of it for when I do feature work, or even like television work. It just works better on like a single camera setup. But like I love Lucrecia Martel,
No.
She's a Argentinian filmmaker. Like, I hope
I shall write it down though, because it's somebody. This is an education for me too.
She does movies where sound is so present and amazing. You should really just watch her work just for that. And I feel like that when we did that eye transition, I was thinking in like her way of feeling and how sound can really bring you in and out. It is the one thing that will physically go within the body of someone. When you get into certain meditative states and you have people will do like sound healing baths and all these things, like you're in that place where someone is doing that kind of thing and you're in a relaxed state, you feel sound move through your body. It literally moves through you. So that's a really powerful thing, and it's underused in television because also like it just has to do with the whole thing. It's like how we digest it, how we view it. Unfortunately, it's. But I think we can challenge, and there are people who like love television so much that they are investing in the right setups to watch things. But working with the sound design crew on this was so fun. I got on, once it was edited and done, got on a call where I was able to review the whole thing, the whole episode, scene by scene, and really talk about my intention as a director. I don't know that like TV directors do that all the time, but like, because it's a luxury to be able to do that. But the things that we talked about, like you can see them in the episode, they're there, and they went above and beyond, I find, on this one. And the quality of the sound, if you watch the flashbacks, changes. So I think Severance is a very full sound experience. It's like very voluptuous. But then when you watch the flashbacks, they went for an analog texture. So it's like a thin texture. And you can, if you just listen, you'll recognize it right away from like more like a movie that would have been shot in like 1990. Like it's like that texture is more that. Or European film where it's less about this like voluptuous design or like, base kind of level design.
Yeah, it felt very close, didn't it? With the analog sound, it felt very much sort of like you were intimate with the.
It was more tactile in a way, like thinner, but I don't know. It's hard to describe these things or describing sound, but it's another feeling. It's like a feeling of smallness and realness, hominess that you kind of get from it, that you feel like you're in a small space. Like when we're in the kitchen with them, you can almost hear like if someone moves and there's a crack, like because their foot moved on the boards, like you hear those sounds, whereas usually you would clean up all these sounds, but like in these flashbacks, like that texture's there.
Yeah, it felt very voyeuristic, I suppose, with the stuff that was shot in the home. Like as we're moving around with them in the 16mm film. Is that what you were shooting that in?
It was actually, so the main scene works 35, but I had a Bolex that my gaffer lent me because it was my house where we shot. I was living in the house, and for 2 years I lived there, on and off because of the strikes. But that also made the whole thing really special. But I had a
because you were living it, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, but I had this. So I had this camera, and I've even bought the first rolls of film myself, not to have to deal with getting it like approved by production. I shot those time lapses with the light moving through on flowers, and like I shot the snow melting and the seasons change, because even that whole time lapse sequence wasn't scripted originally. I asked the writer to put that in. I was just very worried about people not understanding their relation, like not having enough time with them. There were no like really obvious happy moments of them in these, because we had to hit all of these dramatic things. So I just wanted to show a lightness moment of everyday life. And when we were shooting like the main stuff at the end of the shoot, Ben even came, and in between some scenes, he grabbed the Bolex and did a couple things with them outside, which really, really helped me. I was like, so thankful for that. Definitely needed it, which I could have never, like, to get the visuals of that time lapse, it wouldn't have been possible with a normal shooting schedule. That's why I just kind of had to like do some of it on my own.
I was going to ask you a little bit about the final shot of that finale and how you came up with that. What was it? Because I know there wasn't your episode that you were directing, but you were then back to acting as a DP on that. Just talk me through that final shot. It's very kind of, how did you get it? It feels almost painted in a way, I suppose. It's got French New Wave about it. I've seen some things online. Some people saying it's like the 400 Blows, Truffaut. Other people saying it's very Jules et Jim. You yourself said that. Just talk me through it, that final shot.
I think that Jules et Jim comes from the running action moment, when they're running. But the 400 Blows is that still frame thing, and it's a mix of these things. It just is the essence to me of the Nouvelle Vague. But there's a lot of American films also that have done this. It was Ben's idea, and he wanted to do this freeze frames. We shot like the actual footage digital, and then it was put through an optical printing style process, which was reprinted. So it was reprinted back onto film to get the texture. I mean, the idea would have been to do it really exactly how they would have done it before, but that wasn't really possible. And one thing that I think is the most crazy, Ben and I have never talked about this, and I think I've mentioned it to people, but never in an interview. But I realized something the other day, because Ben talked about like reintroducing the color red at the end, which is like this color that we don't use in the show. And I pushed really hard for the color red in 7. And I think sometimes with Severance, you don't really know what you're doing, and things happen, and then you're like, wow, that's like really special. And for me, episode 7 and the flashbacks being shot on film and having access to all of these colors and this place and world that was life before he decided to shut this part of his life out and shut this emotional range of himself. Like he basically went from living life like this to living life like this. And that's the colorscape, and that's the feeling that you get in Severance, without counting 7, obviously. But then that red, that symbol of love, that like symbol of passion, and that energy that is that you see in 7, that's almost something really sad that in episode sad, but it's bittersweet. He found that color and that feeling again with Helly, and it ends in that red tone in film. So Ben and I never talked about this, but I think this is something that just happens, that is a coincidence in a way, that like he's going back to that range of emotion. As we first of all, red is there again, and we're going into film. So it's like this humanness that's like taking over. I find that quite magical.
Yeah, very Kieslowski, very Trois Couleurs Rouge to do the French.
Okay. Metaphors. We're going to use metaphors like him. He's great.
Jessica, it's been such a pleasure. I've got so many other questions I could ask you. I could ask you to break down all these different shots that I've been questioning and everything like that, but we haven't got the time, unfortunately. I've been told by my producer that we've run out of time, but I just want to thank you so much. This has been a real pleasure for me. I've been a fan of yours for a while. If anybody's not seen it, Sweet Virginia is a fantastic film. I think it's available on Amazon Prime. And watch Severance, definitely episode 7, because it's an exceptional piece of work. Thank you so much. I can't wait to see what you're going to do as a director and what comes next from you.
I had fun talking today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for talking to me.